Welcome back to the UKEL. I'm Darksel. Joining me is Jamada. We are on to our third game of the day. It is Lucendi versus Revenge. Now, Jamada, this is kind of a battle of the bottom of the table. Lucendi are sitting at 1-4. They only have that one win in their pocket. And Revenge, they're looking to beat the top teams. They want to go to playoffs.
Yeah, and Revenge still in with a chance of actually making it to playoffs. So they need this win. This has to be the first step for them, and then looking towards next week. So being Lucendi, denying them any opportunity to grab their second win is a must for them now.
So is there any sort of strategy that you want to see these teams pull out? Because they have to pull out all the stops for today. Every win counts.
Yeah, so if you're Lucendi, I think they need to just continue drafting like how they have for the past 2 weeks or so. Sort of very low execution based comps. And yeah, last week they were against Vector, and yes, the Vector draft was something. But
you don't like Vector drafting?
You know what? Look, we've got them game 4. We'll talk about it when we get there, Darksil. But they just stick to what they seem to know and be good at right now. And I'm sure they'll be fine up against Revenge. It'll be interesting to see what kind of bans they decide to come out with. Being on blue side, they're tied down to a lot less than what red side teams usually are tied down to banning. So getting into it, seeing the Shyvana banned away from Grickus and Severus, a champion that they've both played now, I'm pretty sure. Followed up with the Volibear, so no real priority to take that in B1. I like to actually see that. I think Volibear right now as a B1 pick is actually more of a bait than it is a benefit. As my phone goes off, didn't mute it, it's alright. But yeah, Zach on the other side, just not really willing to give that over to Puru, or perhaps have something in wait in the wings to sort of that gets cocked over by the Zach. So we'll have to wait and see. Echo, another ban away there. So now Lucendi, the ball's in their court.
It's almost like they were watching that last game that we had, and they're just banning away the power picks.
Yeah, they don't want to see it.
Just ban away the Zac, ban away the Volibear, and now the Echo take off the board, followed by the Karthus. Karthus, we saw at the start of the day, it didn't really hit the mark, but it's something that we have seen a lot of resurgence for in that bottom lane.
Yeah, so Karthus, of course, being on 10.14 now, with the changes to the numbers on his Q, and then also things like his E, his Defile, seen a lot of rise in priority in the bottom side as sort of an AP carry, and then also occasionally in the mid lane, whereas his sort of jungle role sort of it's in a weird place right now. No one really knows if he's still as good as he was previously in the jungle. So team's still trying to figure that one out. Meanwhile, Lucendi first picking the set. I like to see that. And now it's on Revenge to respond.
Yeah, another little bit of flexibility for that set. Can go jungle, top, even to the support role. We've seen that quite a bit, but they will respond with the Thresh, not really showing anything at this point.
Yeah, not really willing to show anything. Thresh, usually a pretty safe blind here, so Lofticus going to have his hands on that one, and seeing the Teemo hover, most likely a proxy if it does get locked in. We'll have to wait and see what it gets paired with. But you'd imagine it's probably going to be either a priority AD or just a flex pick in general. It's very rare to see anything else. There you go, the Ashe is eventually the lock-in. And now Lucendi, if they want to, they can just respond fully with a bot side here. I'm not sure what they would really be willing to take into Ashe and Thresh, but they could go down the Nautilus route. They know it's sort of like a one-to-one fine matchup in the support role, and then just take another high priority AD carry. They can, of course, go down the Aphelios route. It is open, but more priority on the MF here.
Been a hot minute since we've seen that MF, but they are hovering the Nautilus, like you mentioned. The better of the two hook champions, and it gets locked in.
Yeah, so of course, it's usually sort of the go-to into Thresh a lot of the time. If it's up, most support players will like to take it. What is surprising, though, is technically the MF, though there has been a lot of shifting in the power of AD recently, because Varus has, of course, been taken down a peg, and some people are still sort of juggling whether Ezreal is still a strong champion or not. He is. The E cooldown nerf wasn't really that big of a hit, but we're not going to see him in this game. Going to get the full MF kill lane here, and Revenge just offering Mordekaiser. Potentially blind, because Set can still flex into the jungle, so that one's a bit of a curious one.
I feel like this Mordekaiser is more in the wheelhouse of ego speed, although it's more likely to be up in the top lane for Gracious. Would you like to see that in the middle lane? A bit of flexibility for it?
I mean, it does work, of course, as a flex, like you say. We'll have to see whether or not Revenge opt into taking a jungle R4. Just to hide the flexibility of it, unless they're just expecting Jamie to be taking the set top, and they're just saying, okay, we know this is just going to be a secure matchup for us, and there's no real need to take anything else. However, if this is in Peru's wheelhouse, then things could get awkward for the top lane matchup, and the Revenge then also can get a counter jungle matchup as well. So we'll have to wait and see how things sort of unfold before us in the final pick phase. Meanwhile, in the ban phase, we're going to see Azir taken away alongside the Maokai on the opposite side. With the Orianna ban, speaks to me that Revenge are probably looking for a mid-R4.
Well, banning away the Maokai might speak to the fact that Set is top lane. It's a pretty decent matchup for him. But another few seconds for the last ban to come through. Where will they put the rest of their priority? It's an Olaf. You have to lock in the jungle for the enemy team.
Yeah. And curiously enough, I've just realized that Revenge have banned away Ornn has been a pick that Ego Speed has lent on alongside the Maokai, of course.
Yeah.
Since his return to the lineup here, as getting a couple of hovers through. Not look too serious, but the Graves would make a lot of sense. And this is a lock-in that I actually quite like now. If you're Lucendi, you're kind of in a tough position to where you want to put the set. I feel like you're kind of comfortable putting it into the Graves, and it just opens up for you to kind of have what is technically a Mordekaiser favored matchup in the top side, and they just get a counter pick in the jungle. However, they are going to have to blind something for a mill. It's been hovering on the Cassio for a long time, and it is going to get locked in. And I think this is potentially the first game we've seen of Cassiopeia with a mill here.
They needed AP to round out the composition. They had a bit too much AD with the MF and the set, although they have a little bit of magic damage coming from Lawless too. But what you round your team comp out with looks like it's going to be a top laner. Offering the Renekton.
Yeah, and I think this makes a lot of sense if they decide... I didn't mute it the first time. If they want to play around the top side here, if the Mordekaiser ends up on that side of the map. So Revenge now balls in their court. They could end up just taking something like Syndra if Ego Speed is comfortable on it. It's got a very fine matchup into the Cassiopeia, and it'll be very safe, and it would fit into the profile of what I believe Revenge's composition wants to do with the Graves early on. But timer ticks down, and okay, you're getting an Ego Speed special, apparently, if that's not a proxy pick.
Unless they want to go something like Graves top lane or something, but no, it would seem to be Nocturne mid. Pioneer of that, obviously, being Vedius. So I do enjoy playing lane Nocturne myself, but I play in gold, not in high diamond.
Yeah. Shout out to Vedius. But, I mean, if it is Nocturne mid, of course, it did get changed maybe a patch or two ago now. It was, I think it was nerfed in the jungle, but buffed in lane. If memory serves me right.
Nerfed in lane and buffed in jungle. I don't really remember.
One of us is definitely right. I'm not sure which one it is. But yeah, so some kind of change with the passive. So I believe has either more or less healing available to him. We're gonna have to see how Ego Speed pilots it in the mid lane. It is sort of a special of his in the top lane. And I think we're in for an interesting one. Either way we sort of try and paint the narrative of this game. We've got pretty explosive matchups everywhere you look.
Right. Well, you said that they're pretty okay taking the set into the Graves. So talk to me a little bit about this matchup. Graves, something that we've seen time and time again in recent patches, one of the more S tier kind of junglers. How does this really play out in the early levels?
So it's kind of Graves wants to either power farm entirely or get up in the enemy jungler's face. And because of Graves' typically short range, he has to operate within Set's range too. So Set's usually very comfortable into Graves. In sort of, jungle breakout skirmishes. Whereas Set normally just wants to gank on repeat wherever he can. So it can occasionally, it's a very sort of, depends on how the junglers want to play the game. If Graves wants to sit back and farm, then he runs the risk of Set running amok in every single lane on the map. But if Graves wants to try and invade, then if he doesn't have the lane priority to back him up, the Set can actually just walk up to him and try and contest.
Do you have any priority lanes, though? It feels like Cassiopeia will have a bit of a better time into the Nocturne. Nocturne has decent difference in the actual range that he has, unless he throws out his I think it's his Q, where he just has like the wall of darkness. And then Renekton just feels like that has the priority too. So it just feels like Graves has to play on the back foot. He doesn't have any priority.
I mean, we'll have to see. I'm interested in the mid lane priority. Often or not, Nocturne can actually kind of trade his health bar for lane priority, much like the Galio, except Nocturne actually has inbuilt sustain, so it's not normally as troll to just sort of walk up, take 2 or 3 Twin Fangs and an auto. He will heal it back up over time. So I feel like Graves could potentially have priority from the mid lane. Probably it's going to be very, very 50-50 on the bottom side of the map. I feel like Ashe in isolation versus MF can gain priority, but the threat of the Nautilus being there could potentially stave off the priority on the bottom side. So like you say, it could potentially be worrying if this revenge draft can't find any priority for the Graves, but if he has one lane to play through, whether it's mid or a side lane, then he should be pretty golden here.
All right, but what about the other side of the matchup? Prue, what does he want to do in the early game? You said that he wants to kind of fight around this Graves, but he also wants to be ganking quite a lot. What priority is he putting down? Is he going to try and get a meal ahead? Is he going to try and go to the bottom lane? It feels a bit too safe from the bottom lane.
Yeah, I feel like if the bottom lane of Revenge overstep, then with the setup of Nautilus, he could definitely find some success down there, especially if Ashe manages to blow a flash before he shows up, or even blowing a flash for flash as a set, you normally run the Hex Flash, so you run the risk of then getting dove or just any minor inconvenience that happens in lane, all of a sudden Set's on that side of the map, you don't get to lane anymore because Set could just Hex Flash over any wall or just into the lane with the movement speed, and then it's very troublesome.
It's almost like a Zac coming over the wall with the Hex
Flash. It's almost as scary as a Zac coming over a wall with Hex Flash. However, Puru does have his options. He could definitely go towards the Renekton lane early. If he can skew that lane into a Renekton-favored matchup for the early game, then it takes a very long time for the Mordekaiser to actually ever catch up to the Renekton. And in some cases, the Mordekaiser just never does if the lead is built up big enough. So Puru really has his options set up for him. I feel like the middle lane should probably be a relatively farm fest compared to the other lanes, and he's going to be looking towards Jamie to try and impact the Renekton Mordekaiser lane, and if he's not doing that, then it's going to be action towards the bot side, going to try and put some pressure down on Fuyu and Loftus.
And it's pretty much do or die for both these teams right now. It's more Lucendi is playing spoiler to Revenge if they get the win here, because that will bring them to 2 and 4. It's going to be very difficult for them to try and make it, if not impossible, to try and make it to that playoff spot. And then Revenge on the other side, they're sitting at 2 and 3. They want to take it to the higher teams. They want to get these wins to allow them to actually make it to playoffs and show that they are a decent team.
Yeah, it is really do or die. Lucendi trying to avoid relegation here, and Revenge, last-ditch efforts to try and make it into the top half of the league for playoffs. So we could see, in reality, 2 teams that are really scared to make proactive plays because they don't really want to mess anything up. They don't want to risk falling behind in such a high-stakes game. Or we could just see both teams go balls to the wall, throw the kitchen sink in, and make every proactive play possible to make sure the fate is in their hands.
I know which one I definitely want to see. I want to see the Clown Fiesta. I want to see the bloodthirst come from both these teams. But then on the other side, we see over and over teams, just as you said, they're too scared to make these proactive plays. So the other team dictates the pace of the game. They're behind. They are responding instead of actually doing it themselves. So it can spell disaster for either of these teams if they're on the back foot for too long.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking at either team here, it's definitely Revenge with the slightly more proactive tools. They have the Ashe Arrow, they have the Nocturne Ultimate. They have these long-range engage options, whereas on the opposite side for Lucendi, they only really have the Nautilus for, any kind of immediate engage. And it's not the longest range. It has to normally be a misstep from anybody on Revenge. So I feel like, at least in the early game, once level 6s come in, we're going to have to monitor how the Crystalline Arrow is used and how the Nocturne Ultimate is used, because it can really paint the picture for the next 5 minutes of the game after their uses.
Yeah, it definitely feels almost like level 6, we gank bot lane. Level 6, we dive the bottom lane. Because Jordan, he's such a low mobility carry in this MF. Once his flash is blown, if he doesn't have Hyoyoung there to body block, and even if he does, it's going to be really difficult for him to try and get out of any ganks, especially when you have Ego Speed just jumping on your face. And if you have to flash away from the Crystalline Arrow, there's just no getting away.
Yeah, and Jorde, no cleanse, actually. So if he does get clipped by an Ashe Arrow, he's going to be stunned for a really long time here.
Well, we are on to the Rift for our third game of the day, and we're just waiting for the scene to switch. There we go. Nice and beautiful for our third game of the day. Lucendi versus Revenge. Do or die for both these teams.
Do or die indeed, Darksil. And I've personally been playing a lot of Graves recently in my spare time, so I'm gonna especially keep an eye on Severo to see how he decides to pilot this matchup, because like I said, it's gonna be very jungle dependent early on around the action, because I feel like you know, if you're Puru, you really want to get into these lanes, and if you're Severo, you either want to power farm or you want to try and sort of interrupt the set from doing so, but you always have to operate inside of his range, so it can be a scary thing to do.
Well, so far, just the usual lines of scrimmage for both these teams. Saying scrimmage just because Will wanted Doctor to say it earlier on, although I do regularly say it myself. Graves making his way towards this bottom side. Looks like they're going to start on the eastern and western side quadrants, respectively. So nothing too unusual for this level 1.
Yeah, nothing too unusual. Given Severo starting on his blue, it sort of indicates to me that he's more or less just going to aim for a full clear here. Whereas Puru actually ended up rotating down to his red buff, so likely to see him do 3 camps to hit level 3 and then look towards a lane. So polar opposite starts potentially. Obviously, it's a little bit too soon to tell, but normally whenever a Graves is starting on his blue buff, not really willing to be too active early, and we're seeing early on Ego Speed getting the priority is probably gonna go and get a ward here onto the Raptors of Puru, and at least a little bit of information gained here.
Yeah, it doesn't take too much damage from Emil there. It doesn't throw out any of the Twin Fangs really, but a lot of damage down onto Jamie in the top lane. And this is the power of the Mordekaiser early. Yeah,
the Mord can definitely trade back. As soon as Renekton hits level 3 though, it's going to turn into an entirely different lane.
Yeah.
Having all 3 spells available to the Renekton makes him a lot scarier to trade versus. And if you are the Mordekaiser, it's not an easy time to work around the dash in, stun, and then dash out. It's very hard to return damage often or not. And interestingly enough, Severo's actually gone for a free camp on the Graves, so we'll have to see whether or not he decides to path back down. Seems like gonna eat his Raptors next after his red buff, and same thing for Puru actually, starting on his red, avoids the Raptors, goes up towards the Gromp and the blue, and now he's pathing back down towards the bottom side of the map.
Early farming for both these junglers as a hook will go wide from Lofticus. Level 3 just crested over for Jamie, so he has some kill pressure in the top side. Will go in, gets stunned down onto Grishas, will dart back out. Just nice trading of damage so far.
Yeah, nice trading of damage, and Jamie is going to have an easier time as the lane goes on, till around sort of level 6. And then Mord can sort of start to contest a little bit, depending on which item path he decides to go down. So gonna have to closely monitor how the 1v1 goes, but right now, Grishas is actually winning out pretty heavily in CS. He's about 10 up at the moment. Getting the better of the lane early on, as Puru's gonna have his hands on the top lane skull. Severo did end up picking up the bottom lane skull, but I have to really emphasize the inefficiency of his pathing so far. Because he did skip out on the wolf camp, so it's not gonna respawn a higher level, so he is now eating the level 1 wolves now. It's not as optimal as you'd like if you are the Graves, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. It does mean, however, because Puru cleared in a slightly more efficient manner, that he is going to get his recall off first, and he is going to be back out to the map towards the bottom side.
Yeah, it looks like he's just going to go get his Krugs, and if he decides to try and go for a lane gank here, I think he might get spotted out. I think there's a ward there in that tri-brush. Not too sure, I'll have a look. Yep, there is.
Yeah. So, bottom lane of Revenge, relatively safe for now. And it seems like they're even going to recall right now, so no real threat of dying to a gank right here. You would imagine Fu probably has the gold for at least one item component of value. Not sure if that's BF gold or not.
He can go Caulfields, or he can go with BF Sword. Oh. Sorry, not BF Sword, Berserker Greaves. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, but actually cancelled his recall, let Lofticus get the reset in. Is going to be on the map with Severo now into the bottom side. And Fu, whether or not he decides to base or stay, it's entirely up to him, as Jorde has his reset now, so going to have the item advantage temporarily. It seems like early eyes for Revenge on the Dragon, so nice timing from Lofticus to reset and then be out on the map with Severo, sort of cheating the reset almost in a way where resetting one wave before the enemy bottom lane knows that they'll reset on the next wave means that with Severo can just draw the dragon up easily, as that trade was not so positive for for the Renekton. And early Ocean
power
Dragon.
spike.
Yeah.
Early power spike with the Bramble Vest from Grishus there as well, so we'll make trading a little bit easier for him. And Jamie with the Cull, so he seems to be going more for the scaling aspect of a Renekton, which we don't really see a huge amount. It's kind of more for the early pressure, the early power and prowess of a Renekton that we see him picked up.
Yeah, unsure how he ended up recalling with only enough gold to have a Cull. I did miss the reset timing there, but yeah, Grickus is gonna have a really easy time now for a little while, given the item differential in the top side. And Severo, if he wants to, can play towards the top side. We are actually seeing pings come out because there's a rotation coming up here, and Grickus could be in some trouble.
Yeah, but level 6 has been reached, so can pull him into the Death Realm. We'll just walk his way away. Well, it's Mida down. In comes Emil off to the side as well as the Death Realm goes down onto Poru. We're just gonna try and walk his way away here. Miasma comes down. He should be dead. Rides flashes out, but the damage is good. First blood to Emil.
Yeah, really good miasma there from Emil. Just meant that as soon as Grickus came out of the Death Realm, isn't allowed to immediately flash, and that's all it takes. Enough damage comes down whilst he's in the miasma. He still flashes, still dies. First blood, rightfully over to Emil. And that sort of helps out the Renekton lane a lot. We'll have to see what he actually bases with now, whether or not it actually evens out the item differential, because he was about to be in a very tough position if he didn't get outside help.
Yeah, definitely was, and it gives an assist to Poru and to Jamie, so will help out the team as a whole and puts them at 1,000 gold advantage as Graves moves his way towards the middle lane. Level 6 crested by Ego Speed as well, so he does have his ultimate available if he wants to rotate around or go for any plays in the middle lane. His hook connects in the bottom lane.
Yeah, hook connects, but we're not really seeing a lot of action from the bottom side of the map, almost surprisingly. Was expecting a kill lane of MF and Nautilus to at least show some kind of aggression, but been relatively restrained so far. And Lofticus again getting in a reset. We'll have to see whether or not Revenge, after having such early eyes for the Ocean Dragon, decide to have the same eagerness for the Rift Herald. And given the fact that both side lanes have just reset, also Severo resetting at the same time, I really like to see this. Very in-sync resets here. Looks like they're going to be prepping for this Herald now on spawn, and Lucendi could end up being at least a wave behind on this. They're resetting now. But if Severo and Lofticus decide to sort of start this up almost on spawn, they could realistically do it almost entirely uncontested. But Renekton's sticking around. I'm not sure if he's holding a freeze. It's hard to see on the minimap, but given the fact that his bottom lane are walking up, he can probably just reset now, unless they're just going to stick around to try and 5-man contest the Rift Herald, but it runs the risk of allowing Grickus to just get free plates. And despite the really good reset timing from Revenge, they're not quite in the river yet, but they will have priority off these waves. And as long as they don't die to this cheese gank to brew, they should be fine.
I think they sensed it rather than actually spotting him out. I think there was a control ward in the river brush there, as Ego Speed is going to be chased away. Flash forward, he gets the flash out, but he doesn't get away. Emil picks up his second kill of the game. Graves just waiting off to the side. Grishus is also there. Might be able to go onto him here. Goes forward. Death's Hand will not pull him back. Trading of damage is going to be pretty good. Severo will have to walk away as Peru comes into the lane.
Yeah, Severo actually missing out on the end of the line there. Could have actually been followed up with the collateral damage if he had hit. I feel like Emil was low enough to be in lethal range there, but
yeah,
manages to get away with his life. And Ego Speed's death at a very untimely position could have been Lucendi actually ended up taking the Rift Herald, as Purr really wants to skull crack. Let me deny the way.
Give up. 3 versus 2, not exactly what you want.
But yeah, very curious as to why Lucendi didn't actually try and opt to just immediately start up the Herald there. I feel like with the man advantage, even though Emil was relatively low, with enough pill, they still could have actually just played out the numbers advantage outright, but Herald still stands, and it means that now the Mountain Dragon is going to eclipse the Herald still being up, as Severo is trying to steal away a little bit of jungle here. Puru may be forced to yield this with Lofticus showing up.
Cut connects as well, but they're not going to go in onto that. Only Renekton to respond to this if they do go for the Mantra Drake. It is a 4-man Mantra Drake take, and Ego Speed can rotate over as well. And looks like, actually on the other side, Lucendi are going to take this Rift Herald.
Yeah, they are going to take the Rift Herald. I'll be curious to see whether or not they actually decide to try and make out to the top side to contest Herald, but it seems like they're just all going to rotate towards the bottom lane. I feel like there was potential there for them to maybe just chuck an arrow up and maybe get there in time to at least take the fight afterwards to just try and deny the immediate placement of the Herald on the top side, because now they're going to be trading on pretty bad tempo, because we already have Lucendi on the top side of the map. They're clearing the wave. They're going to be at a numbers advantage, and they could end up just taking the entire tower here with the Rift Herald. Meanwhile, Fuyu and Lofticus only now taking down the first plate, as we see Puru summoning the Rift Herald. Grickus is in no real sort of position to actually contest the tower dropping, and Lucendi win out big here.
Get first tower gold, get a load of tower plates for their team as well. So, as you said, winning out big and extending the gold lead to 3,000 gold. They're going to get a little bit of a bop onto the second tier tower. So, a pretty optimal use of this Rift Herald. If they can get the second one as well, might be able to crack open the mid lane. That's not for another 5 minutes or so. And then in the bottom side, they just get 2 tower plates. Jamie can't really do anything to try and respond to this, but ball is in Lucendi's court.
Yeah, and, you know, Revenge, yes, they do have the 2 dragons at least, but losing out on that much gold was probably not the best thing in the world. Fortunately, it was spread out between 3 members, so not necessarily the end of the world, but you certainly don't want to just give over the entire tower for what is effectively 300 gold in return, but it's realistically the best they can do with the Mountain Dragon on top of it. And now it's going to be about how both these teams decide to set up for the next objectives. There is going to be a period now for at least 3 to 4 minutes where there is just going to be no objective on the map. So teams just jostling for the remainder of plates that they could get and just picks on the map. And it is Revenge with the tools, with the Nocturnal Armor, with the Crystalline Arrow from Fuyu to try and find those picks. And there is no cleanse available to anybody on the Lucendi side, so I would like to see them get a little bit proactive there.
But Jamada, this is what we said during Champions Select. Teams can play scared. They have the proactive tools available, but they're not playing proactively, and that's why they're on the back step. They have 2 Drakes, but they have no towers taken, and they haven't been taking the fight to Lucendi. It still feels like as if it's all for Lucendi to win at this point. They need to start making moves.
Yeah, Revenge definitely do, and I feel like because of their draft, they probably end up getting outscaled pretty hard. Nothing should realistically be able to kill Emil the longer the game goes on. So Emil's going to be sitting really pretty because of the operating range of a lot of the Revenge champions. He's going to be up to 1v1 just about anyone on the Revenge lineup once he does get the IAMs under his belt. So Revenge also on a bit of a soft timer here. If Lucendi can actually funnel a little more gold onto Emil and accelerate him even further, things just get scarier. But for now, we're seeing a little bit of a congregation towards the bottom side of the map. Could see a fight here.
Yeah, going on to Emil. Petrifying Gaze is good, but he is made to flee away. Shutdown gold goes over to Ego Speed as Peru's looking to chase him down. Flashes forward. Can they get it over to Jamie? They cannot. Peru picks up that kill, forced the flash out of the graves just to get away.
Yeah, and at least it's something proactive, like you said. I wanted to see a good use of the Nocturne Armor, and that was that. However, didn't quite manage to kill Emil fast enough to be able to just leave without actually taking a kill trade for it. Ego Speed drops, and Severo ends up having to blow his flash. It's better than nothing. They do get the shutdown at least. Emil was sitting on, I want to say, about a 300 gold shutdown, so nice return overall. But now for this next dragon fight, Severo isn't going to have flash. The Nocturne Armor should just about be off cooldown for the next skirmish. Emil dragged into the death row.
Yep, we'll be hit in the face with Obliterate, but the Twin Fangs are just mincing him. Grish is going to try his best, but he'll eventually go down. Brave's waiting off to the side, but when you're in the death realm, nothing you can do as in comes the combo in the bottom lane. Missed with the flay, almost got him underneath the tower, but Hyoyoung is quite tanky, so I don't think it would have saved them any damage or gotten them any kills.
Yeah, most likely not, and with Puru in the area, it just means that they are just going to take advantage of the fact that Fuyu and Lofticus have to just respect the jungler being here, going to take the tower for themselves, and are going to opt into a reset. Does mean that they might end up being a little bit slow to the dragon here, and that's a really big deal. Revenge already being on 2 dragons. If they are able to get into the river and sort of burst this one down, could just put them on Infernal Soul point. We'll have to see whether they recognize the amount of time they could potentially have, as Jamie's down here trying to sort of jostle lane prior. That is a lot of damage.
Beautiful. Pops the Dominus. He should be dead to rights here. Actually gets the flash out. Ultimate was on cooldown for ego speed, so he couldn't just zoom on and finish him off. It does get the flash out of the top laner of the side of Lucendi, and Dragon has spawned. Started off by the side of Revenge. Level 9 to level 10 for the junglers, so has the superior smite. Managed to pick it up. It is Soul Point now as Peru's looking to chase them down. Will miss with the Nautilus hook, and they're looking for it to take this fight. Uses the W, but Peru has to get away. Gracious. Everyone is just facing the wrong direction for the Petrifying Gaze, but Emil picks up the first kill of the fight. The second goes over to Jorday, and everyone on the side of Revenge has to flee. They have to try and get the heck out of the bottom lane because Lucendi is coming.
Yeah, Lucendi is coming, and even though Emil's ultimate didn't actually stun anybody up, the CC that it still provides and the damage was enough for Fuyu and Grikus to actually bite it. And off the back of this, yes, they don't get the Infernal Dragon because of the poor reset timings. They are at least going to get some form of consolation prize in the tier 2 tower and the kills and the gold. So now they have to be on point for when this next dragon spawns. If they make an error in not being able to secure the next dragon, the Infernal Soul could potentially be enough to bridge the kind of scaling gap that is currently present between the Lucendi and Revenge drafts. And before that, like we mentioned, Emil, because of the scaling aspect that Cassio brings to the table and the operating ranges of the Revenge champions, we saw him 1v1 Grikus outright. And I wanted to say, but couldn't because there was action going on the bottom side. That doesn't get better for Revenge. So they have to try and find some kind of avenue, whether it's through the Crystalline Arrow, whether it's through the Nocturne Ultimate. They have to try and set up some advanced vision in areas of the map to try and catch Lucendi rotating here if they want to stand a chance between now and the next dragon spawning, because I feel like Lucendi might not make the same mistake that they've made for the past 2 dragons.
Well, as we're about to crest the 18-minute mark, it is a 5,000 gold lead for the side of Lucendi. 6-1. They are looking better now than they have done in the entire regular season. The ultimate popped by Ego Speed, looking to go on to Jamie here. Will not manage to get his way away. He doesn't have the flash. Jamie should be dead to rights. In comes the ultimate from Graves just to get the assist. And the second Rift Herald is going to be picked up by Lucendi.
Yeah, second Herald picked up for Lucendi. Revenge at least trading the kill on the solo laner there, so again, another consolation prize, but the gold's going on to a Nocturne that's not necessarily snowballing that hard, so how important is it really that Jamie dies in a position like that? Rift Herald going to be dropped here to try and take down the mid-tier 1 if they're fast enough. Going to be able to save the first charge, so going to be able to at least corral the Herald into the second mid-tier 1, tier 2, I beg your pardon. And big win for Lucendi taking down the mid-tier 1, and now they get to be just set up on either side of the map that they want to. With the mid-tier 1 being down, it means that they can take a lot more liberties with setting up further in towards the jungle.
They could set up all this forward vision that you alluded to earlier on. We wanted Revenge to be the ones to be able to set up the forward vision, but with that team fight win, with that play win, I should say, it's just firmly in the grasp of Lucendi. They can set up all this vision. They have a 5,000 gold lead. Yes, it's still a point, but Revenge are still behind by almost a gigantic amount at this point. And as we said earlier on, Revenge aren't going to outscale Lucendi. It's firmly in the driver's seat for Lucendi at this point.
Yeah, so Lucendi really betting on the Infernal Soul here. Even then, because of how easily Cassio should just be able to kite around most of the targets in Revenge, even with an Infernal Soul, I'm not quite sure it entirely bridges the gap present in the scaling. It's definitely going to help if they can secure it, but I don't even think it's going to be the end-all be-all, and if they don't manage to secure the next dragon, they're going to be in for a world of hurt.
It feels like Sif Revenge need to wait for an Elder Soul. An Elder Dragon for just so that they can get the execute damage down, but it's going to be so hard to play around that timer. if you manage to get the Infernal Soul, if you manage to stave off for another 6 minutes so that the Elder Dragon spawns, and then if you manage to pick up the Elder Dragon, there's so many ifs, so many little things that you need to be able to do for Revenge, but you don't have the gold, you don't have the scaling to be able to do it.
Yeah, that's the problem with Revenge's situation right now, is they're just too far behind. If they were, you know, sort of 2,000 gold down, something that was actually, you know, not so meaningful, then they would at least have a chance at sort of contesting this dragon reasonably. As okay, Lucy.
Yeah, they're gonna go for the flank here. Flash forward, bullet time on top of everything. As for you is exhausted, he's just hooked back. But in goes Ego Speed. He's gonna try and find a reply kill. Will manage to find it with the help of the Graves, but he goes down eventually as the Death Realm goes down onto Hyoyoung. That is exactly who you want, because no one else you can be fighting right now. But the Death Realm will not last forever. He gets cut down. Emil picks up that kill.
Yeah, and on the back of it is going to be Lucendi that just pick up the Infernal Dragon. So now Revenge, they have to wait another 5 minutes potentially to actually... I mean, I can't even really say 5 minutes, because realistically, if Lucendi are playing the game correct here, Revenge should never have an in to be able to take a dragon for the rest of the game. So now it's, like I said, the only thing that this comp can do is just find a pick off the Crystalline Arrow. There is no QSS yet on any carry member here for Lucendi. There is no cleanse. So if they can find a pick like that, it buys them, I can't even say it buys them time, because they get outscaled. You sort of understand the predicament that they're in. But if you're Revenge, you just have to try and look for a pick, try and sort of delay the game in order to try and potentially get some kind of Baron attempt off to sort of flip the game on its head. If they can't find that, I feel like Revenge are just going to roll over and die.
But the saving grace, the silver lining for Revenge, is you're playing strong side Baron contest. You're able to hop over that wall, you're able to flash over the wall to try and steal the Baron, to try and contest it. But then on the other side, you're playing weak side Dragon contestation. You have to face check and then walk entirely across the river just to try and contest to get the Infernal Soul. So what do you do if you're Revenge? You get outscaled, you're on the back foot, you're down by 6,000 gold. Jamada, what can you do in this game for Revenge to come back into it? Is it any way possible?
I think the only way that you can make a reasonable argument here for Revenge to come back into this game is if Emil slips up and they can just find an arrow onto him, find a Nocturne ultimate and layer some CC down, and the pick onto Emil doesn't really cost them anything. They try and fire out an arrow here onto the support.
Ego Speed goes in. Can he find the kill? Yes! The answer is an emphatic yes, but he gives up his life for it. Teleport was challenged by Gricius. He thought a fight was going to erupt. It's just a trading of kills.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, that's all it is, a trading of kills. Yes, it slows down any attempt Lucendi could have at Baron, but Lucendi are in so much control, they can just wait for Jorday to respawn and then resume the position. They can just sit up on the top side of the map with all of the vision and wait for Revenge to come into them if they don't feel like flipping a Baron. And if they don't feel like flipping a Baron, they'll just wait for the next Infernal Dragon, deny that away from Revenge. And Revenge are just going to be stuck in this cycle if they don't find a meaningful pick anymore.
And it feels like as if Revenge are trying to itemize into something that is a little too expensive for the state of the game. We have Ego Speed itemizing towards a Trinity Force, which is such an expensive item, and it's not something I feel will really help the game state in any spectacular way. And then on the other side, you just, well, I say other side, everyone else, you just don't have enough gold. You just don't.
You know, Graves, 24 minutes, he's sat on his Black Cleaver, at least he's happy on that spike, but Gricius is sitting on components and an Asher's Tooth. Ash is still waiting for a Runan's Gold. Everyone's still waiting for item spikes. Now, this does mean, if you want to make an argument for Revenge here, that they have, you know, about another minute or so to sort of farm out gold, farm out waves and jungle camps, and then reset. And then if they have the gold to finish up those items, oh, I'm going to have to pause. They're making a pick onto Emil. This could be
it. Beautiful spell shield there, but Emil does manage to get the flash away. You need to do a bit better than that to try and pick off Emil.
Yeah, and I have to sort of bring up, I'm not sure why Gricius wasn't just immediately flashing on Emil's face. That pick is so huge if they're able to pick up the shutdown there. the ego speed armor was good, but there just wasn't enough follow-up immediately, and Emil was able to flash out of the fear, and he gets away with his life. So now he's at least going to be able to reset before the dragon comes up, and he's going to be there for the dragon. Now, if there is any positive, it means that Emil is, of course, not going to have flash for the next dragon fight. If they can find an arrow, it could be good. Arrow right now, though, used onto Puru, and defensive teleport comes down. Nothing's even going to really come from it. And Revenge, they're really, really desperate. You can tell off the last two plays they've just made to try and find a pick, but nothing is working.
And that's another big cooldown there blown for Fuyu. Another minute at least until that arrow comes back up, and that's one of your major engage options here. And you're still waiting on ego speed, but you don't want ego speed to just hop in all alone. He needs a GA for it to really make any engage kind of worthwhile. They're just gonna push out the waves in the middle lane, push out the waves from the bottom lane, prepare for this Drake, which is up in 15.
Yeah, they're just able to brute force priority and then just slip into Fog of War. And here, now, Revenge are in a position where they have to face check. I'm not sure if Fu has Hawkshot available to him right now. Used right there, as you saw, so not going to be able to have that one up if he hasn't used it recently, because I believe it works on a stacking system. But Lucendi again with the in on the dragon, and they should just be able to burst this one down without any real contest.
Yeah, he goes in with the ego speed ultimate, but they pick him off pretty easily. Hyoyoung, pretty tanky. He will eventually go down, but that's 2 kills over to the side of Lucendi for the price of 1. It is a kill special for them. We'll pick up the objective. Now 2 Infernal Drakes for Lucendi. And he just can't get these ins.
Yeah, and it's just because the Cassio is so powerful, and with the innate gold lead in the game, Lucendi are just able to force lane priority and by proxy just have the vision in place so that Revenge are the ones face checking into the area. And if Revenge have to face check into a Nautilus, into a Cassiopeia, into a set, almost any member on the Revenge lineup just immediately dies to any CC. As soon as one bit of CC gets landed onto a member of Revenge, it's just followed up immediately by damage, set, Renekton, anything. And now, again, Revenge in a position where it's just the Baron up. They have to wait another 4 minutes now for the Infernal Dragon. And if they can't find a pick in the meantime, they're just going to struggle. And it seems like this time Lucendi not going to really take their foot off the pedal. Emil has blue buff. If they want to start the Baron relatively soon, they're always going to have the priority and the vision in the area to do so. And things just go from bad to worse for Revenge.
Any way that they can back into this game, it feels like if it's slipping away more and more with each play. 12 kills to 5 doesn't even speak to how far ahead Lucendi are at this point.
Yeah, no, the kill score isn't really representative of how the game state has been for a pretty long time now. Realistically, Revenge, I think 4 out of their 5 kills have just been, you know, Lucendi, a member of Lucendi sort of just misstepping once or twice, and then, you know, one for one kill trades. As now, looks like we're going to get a pick onto Jamie, but I don't know, he's...
USS is available, will be used. But he's going to go down to the Obliterate. Savro, this is your Hail Mary play. You have to try and steal this. Hyoyoung going to try and body block this. We'll use the ultimate. 1,000 health, will be stunned down by the arrow, and in goes Grishis, but it's a fight on 2 flanks here. Lofticus gets the flash out of the AD carry. He gets his way away, but Grishis tries to pick off Hyoyoung. The Ashe picks up the kill onto the set. Jordan picks up the kill himself. Thanks to Emil Lol, he actually gets the recipient of that kill. And that is a 1 for 2 in favor of Revenge, but the Baron picked up by Lucendi.
Yeah, and even though 2 members of Lucendi end up falling, it's still the Baron that's off the map for Revenge to ever attempt to flip. And the important member, Emil, is the person with the buff alongside Jordan and Hyoyoung, so Lucendi is still very happy with this trade. It doesn't eat into any of the time or tempo that they have with the Baron. Member's just gonna go back eventually and base for items, and once they come back out onto the map, they're gonna be so much stronger than Revenge. I'm struggling now. I've been struggling for a while now to see a way in for Revenge, and things are just spiraling really, really fast. It's just gonna get worse and worse. Emil now very, very close. I thought he was gonna end up going Death Cap. Yeah, but he's ended up just opting into A blasting wand and a tome just, I think, isn't mathematically that's enough for him. You know what? We're not going to talk about it. He's
Yeah,
full items.
it's enough for another needless.
Yeah. He's look, he's strong. All right, doesn't really matter too much. No one on this map from Revenge can 1v1 him, even if Grikus drags him into the Death Realm. You know, it's a he's locked in there with him situation.
There he goes, Ego Speed! Ashar comes in with him, but he just gets popped almost immediately. He goes golden just to buy a little bit of space. Pew, gonna try and get the damage down. Jordi picks up the kill onto Ego Speed, gonna try to trade one back, but that's a double kill for the MF. Uses the Let It Rain, uses his ultimate as well to find so much damage. Jamie picks up the kill onto Fuyu. That's a 3 for 2 so far in the fight as Emil is dominating. 4 kills. 4 dead, I should say, on the side of Revenge, and that should be all she wrote.
Yeah, Lucendi could damn well end the game on this push if they so wish. We'll have to see whether they show some restraint and decide to opt into the Infernal Dragon. But yeah, what a one-sided fight. Once Emil TP'd, it just looked pretty doomed. Ego Speed did ult in, did almost find Jordi, but wasn't enough damage at the end of the day, had to stopwatch, and once he stopwatched, signing his own death warrant, and now Lucendi again denying another Infernal Dragon. 3 Infernal Dragons on the side of Lucendi here on this Cassiopeia with this much ability power, and we can't actually understate how powerful Jordi is right now, how powerful this MF is. He's 3 items, has the QSS now, so he's no longer a valid target for a crystalline arrow, and it feels like arrows haven't really been aimed at the MF almost for the entirety of the game anyway. So QSS now available there for him just in case he needs it. Can also cleanse off the fear too. And now Lucendi just in a position of power where they can play through both the side lanes, they can leave the mid lane to just shove up with the super minions naturally. And Revenge, they're just gonna have to pull the trigger on one of the side lanes, but they'll most likely have to pay for it with an inhibitor.
And he also has that stopwatch, so even if he gets the QSS used, he has that stopwatch to buy a little bit of space, and the rest of his team can blow up whoever dives on top of him, namely Ego Speed. He's the one that's going to be throwing his body at the enemy team. And it just gives you the set, it gives you the Nautilus as your main targets. You don't really want to go onto Emil because he'll just throw out the Miasma, and you just get locked in and bursted down because he's level 18. He's doing so much damage. He's the Rylus Crystal Scepter now with that needlessly large rod, so almost full build. And you're just slowly bleeding out for Revenge. You have to try and defend here, but how can you defend?
You can't, really. If you can't find an engage outside of the base, a pick onto a sole individual member, as Hook lands, could see a...
On Halofticus, in goes Ego Speed. Can he find the kill? Goes golden just by a little bit of space. Double kill already for the Emil on Cassiopeia. Make that a triple kill. Looking for the Quadra. Can he get the pentakill? Will they deny? Rish is actually doing a decent amount of damage. He will kite it back though. The Twin Fangs going down onto him. He should go down here. Picked up by Jamie. That won't be the Quadra kill, but that will be the game. The second ever win in the regular season for Lucendi. They take it to Viperio and they take the win.
Yeah. Leveling the scoreboard now. I believe 2 and 4 Lucendi and Revenge both are with this result. And Lucendi, they looked pretty good this game. Into a Revenge who at least had a strong looking early game, but the Nocturne pick couldn't get snowballing. They never really found consistent picks with the Crystalline Arrow. And like we said, the game, looking at the game, a very good indicator was going to be the first use of the Nocturne Ultimate, the first use of the Crystalline Arrow, and we didn't really see hyper positive yields from the uses. So as soon as those ultimates weren't really used to the highest level, that was kind of it. Lucendi's scaling kind of just took over because the Nocturne pick, it can't really do much into most of the composition of Lucendi, and everyone else kind of just done their job around the meal.
But you see, that's the thing about this Nocturne pick. We said when it was locked in, it's for Ego Speed. He's got to be able to rotate to the bottom side or go to the top side once he gets that level 6. Once he gets level 6, gank bot lane. But we didn't see it happen. We saw some, I was going to say some good ultimates from Ego Speed, but every time he went in, he basically just died. It's no fault of his own. It's just how Nocturne really operates. But we were expecting him to do more with it from the level 6 point, try and snowball Fuyu, and it just never happened.
Yeah, and it's just a curious draft overall. It feels like there was no true direction or theme that they were going for. They had the Graves there. They had, you know, at least one lane of priority. They had the counter pick in mid lane. They could have picked something to at least gain mid lane priority to just play through the Graves if they wanted to. But Ego Speed's wacky champion pool means that they opt into the Nocturne. And yes, whilst it did buy early lane priority, it didn't really do much else outside of that. When the Graves isn't actually using the priority early, it kind of just becomes this weird, you know, they're getting the first step right, but they're not doing anything off the back of the first step. And even though, yes, Revenge had an okay looking early game where they picked up 2 dragons, and then eventually even Lucendi gave them, in reality, the 3rd dragon, the compositions just took over, right? Lucendi's scaling comp with the Cassiopeia around it, the Cassiopeia having a good comp surrounding it, just took over the game. That all of the champions on the Revenge drafts have to operate inside of the Cassio range, and Cassiopeia outscales every champion on the Revenge draft that has to operate inside of that range. So as soon as that 4th dragon went down and it wasn't in favor of Revenge, you kind of just felt like it was going to be a slow bleed.
Yeah. And a slow bleed is exactly what it was. There's just no avenue back into the game. But this does bring us to MVPs, and I have a feeling we're both gonna synergize on that one.
Is it even a question, Doxel?
No, I don't think so. I was gonna say, you know what? It's a meal. Let's go to a break. But I want you to get your opinion anyway, in case you're like, well, we're not KDA analysts here. We'll go for
no. It was undoubtedly a meal. He was just too much of a driving force for this game. When Revenge Bodies dropped, Emil was there, and that was kind of the story of the game. So rightfully so, I think, earning our MVP.
Yeah, and Galaxy Brain there for you, the only one to say Lucendi for the win for that match there. So
yeah, there you go.
Will, very happy. Hey,
I'm feeling good.
He said London earlier on, so I think it's a 1 apiece.
It's a 1 apiece.
Yeah, but we're going to go to a quick break before we bring you the final game of the day, Vector versus Viperio. Don't touch that browser.